Hello there, everyone. Patricia Hayes here with today's Coffee Time Career Chat. So excited to be here, continuing this fabulous series that we're working on. But if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Again, my name is Patricia. I am executive advisor, empowerment coach, and strategist, where I focus on things that are focused on developing those professional relationships that you need for the long term in an authentic and purposeful way, and that support you and empower you throughout your leadership and entrepreneurial journey. Okay. And we are continuing with this series of thriving through transitions in life and career. I have been loving this. Go check it out on the YouTube channel. If you have missed any of the pieces, you can go check it out there. Today, we are going to be talking specifically about the signs of a transition meltdown season. I mean, this is not the thing we generally want to be talking about, but we use the seasons a lot when we're talking about, particularly with weather, right? And so, you got hurricane season, you got tornado seasons, you got all these different things. Well, guess what? In your professional career and in life, there are seasons in those things as well, including when a transition is clearly on the way, whether you are ready for it or not. So we're going to talk about what those signs are today, and a little bit about what you can do, but we're going to get more into that in future episodes. So here's the thing. First, I want to say that all transitions are not bad, but they absolutely are challenging. I am not going to mislead you in that. Even the best transitions can be very challenging for different reasons, okay? So that said, here's the thing. It's going to be helpful to identify what those, transitions look like, whether you're going to define it as something that's not quite so good to ones that are good, but still a little difficult, still a little hard, right? So the ones that generally get labeled as not so good are when there's a layoff involved, you've been fired from a position, those quote political retirements. I've worked a lot in the political realm, so there's a lot of that going around, doing shifts in leadership. There's also when there's a toxic work environment at play. Those are definitely not good. When you're maybe moving from an old position that you've maybe overstayed, and there's some feelings attached to that, that can be something that's not so good. And then honestly, when you've just plain bored and there's lack of a challenge, because again, that generates certain types of feelings that can lead to things not being really good for that transition. Now, here are some other opportunities for transitions, which are generally maybe like exciting and great, but they're still going to be challenging, right? That's when, let's say you're making a move from a long-term position, but it's one that you loved. So it can actually be a little scary. It's like, but I loved this job, but this next thing is here, right? Another one is when you have an offer to move after a recent move. This has happened to me a couple of times. They're very unsettling, but also great opportunities. And but it can be a little disruptive to move and then suddenly, let's say within 2 or 3 years, move again. All right. Because this happens a lot more than it used to, but that sticking around for 5-10 years does not necessarily happen a lot anymore. I mean, it happens, but not as much as it used to. All right. And then you've got the quote dream opportunity that just drops in your lap. And it's one of those, you gotta go, like you gotta make the next move. And this may seem like it's only targeted at folks who are working in traditional 9-to-5s, but this applies in professional settings that are entrepreneurial, small business owner as well, right? You have those things, where there's a transition where you are having to lay off people or you're having to fire folks. There's a great podcast Professional Troublemaker by Levi Ajayi Jones, where she shares in one of those series her whole experience with having to lay off and fire, not lay off, but fire her entire team. I mean, that is a significant transition and very traumatic. I highly recommend, particularly if you are a small business owner, that you go listen in on that series, because it is quite empowering and insightful to listen, because she's very open about that. And so there are all of these different opportunities, or these different experiences when transition season hits, and you want to make sure that you are entering it with open eyes, if at all possible. Okay. So those are some of the signs, right? When it's happening, good, not so good. So here's the thing. What are some of the actual signs when you're in the midst of this and you're like, wait, am I in a transition meltdown season or what? And that is, I kind of divide them into two pockets: external ones and internal ones. The external ones, meaning like outside of yourself, where there are shifts in the organizational structure or leadership. Really telling and insightful, particularly, it doesn't matter really about the size, but in large organizations for sure. Because when there's a major shift in the organizational structure or leadership, what often happens as a result of that are layoffs or firings or something like that. So be mindful of that, or political retirement, right? When there is a new person elected to a position, literally, I mean, it's just expected as a part of that, okay, this staff is gone unless you're invited to return, right? I've been a part of several of those. So that's just something, again, it's a very obvious one, right? Another one to watch out for is this: if your boss leaves. Doesn't matter good reasons or not so good reasons, but if your immediate supervisor, leader, whoever leaves that position, then it's kind of one of those, be mindful that you may be entering one of those transition seasons as a result of that. So just keep your eyes open. We talked about a toxic work environment that is developing or that has deepened. So it's already existed and it's deepening. That's absolutely a sign that transition meltdown season is upon you, and there are some decisions you might need to make. And or think about this from a business perspective. If your primary contact with a major client leaves, like, this can be huge, because if they're not bought in, or there wasn't instructions that are left at a higher level, whatever it might be, this can lead to definitely impacting your business in a major way, right? So it's definitely a sign for a transition. Internally, those are the external ones. The internal signs are if you're starting to get these feelings of frustration and resentment, which come up a lot from, certain positions, when things aren't going well, when there are lots of negative things going on in the office or the business environment, and you're like, this has got to change. Like, that's definitely a sign. Another one is if you're bored. And a lot of times people don't think of that, because it's like, oh, well, you should just be grateful for what you have. Well, gratitude does not outweigh boredom. That's a whole other conversation, right? Gratitude does not outweigh boredom and needs to be acknowledged. Because if you are bored, guess what's coming soon? Potentially frustration and resentment. Like, they have this whole little family of things that come along. And so acknowledge that if you're experiencing boredom with your position, doesn't matter that you're great at it and you could do it with your eyes closed. If it's no longer feeding your soul, that can absolutely show you potentially that there's a sign, that transitions is underway. And then if your purpose and alignment with the work that you're doing, the people you're working with, whatever shifts, right? This is one of those that's, I don't want to say it sneaks up on you, but it does. It can. Because again, things could be seemingly to go well, but you're just not feeling like you feel like something's out of whack, right? Something's a little off. And not because there's something externally bad happening, but it's definitely within you. And that's when perhaps you're going through some growth. You've experienced some things that now make you realize, what used to matter to me doesn't matter as much anymore. And you realize you're starting to get out of alignment, or you need to realign where you're headed, professionally and personally. And then lastly, internally dealing with the fact of, opportunity is knocking and you are going to have to do something about it, right? And those can be tough decisions to make, but they're definitely ones that have to be made as they relate directly to you. So all of that said, what are some of the next steps? Well, we're going to get into this like I said, in a deeper level in some future episodes. But today we're just going to, drop these 3 nuggets. On your next steps, when you're feeling that and you can tell it's like, oh my goodness, transition meltdown season is upon me. You've got the signs or whatever. What are some of the things? Number 1, do not be an ostrich. You are not an ostrich. Just like I always tell people, you are not a flat Stanley. You are not an ostrich. Do not stick your head in the sand. Do not ignore the signs, because ignoring the signs can be so much more harmful to your health, to your career, to your relationships, than if you just went ahead and prepared yourself to deal with everything, directly. Right? So don't be an ostrich. Secondly, one of the things that I'm going to recommend is that you prepare yourself to engage in conversations, but in a safe environment. What do I mean by that? I mean by safe with someone who is not invested in the outcome of your decisions. Number 2, that they can be trusted to hold water. Everybody can't hold water. Some of the people that you love the most and love to talk to, they can't hold water. By that, I mean they can't keep, it's not even about keeping a secret, but they can't keep it to themselves. They may, acknowledge it in some way informally. Here's the thing. Your shifts and transitions are not for public display unless you choose to make it so. And the dangers here are that when you are literally in the midst of just trying to figure out what's next, what you may have a conversation with one person about today can completely flip on its head next week. But if you've got a leak and they're sharing these things, then you've got stuff that's going out that should not be going out, because you're still growing in your thought process, in your insights, and in deciding. So you need a safe space in order to be able to have those types of conversations. If you go to some of my old content, this is one of my go-to things that I make sure and share with folks is go get your own personal mastermind, right? Preferably before you need it, but a lot of times it comes as a result of a transition. I'll try and remember to link that to this session, that personal mastermind, because that's when you go find folks who know you or are familiar with you and your work, who are removed, so it could be an old boss, but not your current boss. It could be an old mentor who you're not working with directly. It could be someone who has always been a great cheerleader for who you are and what you do. And maybe, they would be great to get some additional insights. And of course, you've got, the pathways of a coach, of a mentor, those types of things where you can go get paid help, right? Where you can get paid consistent help to support you through this transition. But it's so important to engage in these conversations and to not hold on to this stuff, because the things that roll around in our heads during a transition, they are tough to deal with, and you need an outlet. That's really what this is about. You need an outlet that's safe, that's reliable, and that you can tap into on a moment's notice in multiple ways. Okay. The third next step that I'm going to say is you have to start reflecting and even dreaming on the what if scenarios, right? And I say dream because even in the midst of if the transition is not a good one, well, what would it look like for you to have an environment that is supportive, that is kind, that works for you, that allows you to explore who you are professionally, at a higher level, that supports you to be a better leader? What does that look like? Right? When you start reflecting and thinking about that, that is actually a healthy part of the transition process that will help you through this meltdown piece and also remind you that there is hope on the other side. Because guess what? As I stated previously, this is a journey. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So figure out where you are in the process and then move along accordingly so that you don't linger too long in some space, by being an ostrich, by not having the conversations that you need that will strengthen and empower you, but instead also allow you to reflect and dream about what if I actually could go to the next level of where I want to be. Okay. So that's it. It's going to be a quick and short one today because we're going to spend some time on some of these things. As I said, moving forward, if you are ready to do a deep dive into your own professional growth, wherever you are in the midst of a transition, whether you're at the beginning, if you're knee deep in it, or if you're on your way out, guess what? Even if you're on your way out, your next level transition is about what does it look like for you in your new role, in your new space. Okay. So I would love to have that conversation with you. Again, only if you're really willing to do the deep dive and do the work, right? If you're still wishy-washy and trying to figure out, I'm not sure, guess what? This is not the space, because this is about let's go and make it happen for you. All right. And you may need a little more time to get to that. So I respect that for folks. But if you're ready to work one-on-one and say, yeah, I need that support right now, today, let's make it happen. Hit me up in the DMs, send me an email. Let's see what this looks like for you moving forward, and really help you get to the next level of where you want and need to be so that you can thrive during your transition season. All right. Take care, everyone. Talk to you again soon. Bye.